Mm-hmm.
The point about that, though, and this is fascinating, this part, because some of the stuff I haven't reported, but other people have connected dots on, and I defer to them for discovering it. If in fact this is true, which I am not saying it is, but people are now comparing the delay in Kawhi Leonard aspiration payments in fall, winter 2022 to when Kawhi sat out games. And they're saying, and it's interesting that when he wasn't getting paid, he was really dealing with knee tightness. And by the way, for the record, Kawhi Leonard was dealing with knee tightness. Of course he was, because he was out the previous year and he's Kawhi Leonard, and that is very credible. At the same time, December 15th comes around, spoiler alert, that paycheck comes in that is suspiciously sized, right? Like next to Dennis Wong's payment on December 6th, 9 days earlier. And Kawhi's playing a lot of games after December 15th. And all I'm saying is what other people have observed. But in the movie script, right? In the movie script of this, the ultimate stiletto heel on your testicle is, I'm not even going to play in the game until you give me the no-show job payment plus stock option that you told me. I'm actually going to not play.
It's crazy. He's the most likely to be credibly injured and also the most likely to do what you're saying. Just based on what we've seen.
It's why I didn't report it, right? I just don't know how to prove it. But it's a fascinating side-by-side game log.
Well, and that's a power players have in general. And one of the reasons why these NBA players have been able to dictate terms of where they go is I can just take all the talent away. I can be Vince Carter in Toronto. I can just decide to stop being Vince Carter. And then what are you going to do? What are you going to do? So they've got such power. And those are the stories that really fascinate me and why I was so interested in the sneaker wars. This idea of a fairly young man, what he does just physically, having massive Frank Sinatra has a cold ramifications on these multi-billion-dollar businesses that millions of people care about. That's an unusual condition. That is a strange ecosystem. And man, this story has just opened my eyes to a lot of things. I made this journey. Do you know? I'm guessing you know about the Midwit meme. Do you know about the Midwit meme? For those who don't know, it's this meme. It's a bell curve image, and the whole idea of it is that the dumb guy and the brilliant guy agree, but the guy in the middle, perhaps because he has the aspiration, to look smart, doesn't get it. I felt like when your reporting started, I was in the Midwit section of going, I don't know, this can't possibly be what it looks like. And people were reflexively going, nah, guilty, looks bad, bomber, looks bad. And I was going, there's got to be a little something. And then over the course of the reporting, there's more and more bomber, like more phone calls. And then you reach, could you feel people making that journey over the three-part series?
Absolutely. And Mark Cuban, by the way, the argument we had was fundamentally about what excuse could there possibly be? And a lot of it was, I think, this presumption that could it really be this dumb? And the Coen Brothers part, I think I returned to because it's not simply, a Coen Brothers movie is not simply, look at this idiot. It's look at this idiot in a whole Rube Goldberg device in which he is navigating with varying levels of awareness. And I think the way that this story is complicated but quite clear to me, my worldview on this, where I stand today, open to new reporting and refutation and all of that, but my view of it today, State of the Union, is that Steve Ballmer was in fact scammed by aspiration. So were many others. And the people went to federal court and they pled guilty, Joe Sandberg and Ibrahim Al-Husseini, for wire fraud, and that is true. What also happened, though, according to my reporting, is that Steve Ballmer was trying to use them, partner with them, actually, trust them to deceive the NBA. And what he did was choose the wrong, pliable, to quote Tom Brady, pliable partner that would seemingly be down to do anything, because what Steve Ballmer did not care about was actually money in the way that you might logically prioritize. He cared about doing the thing he wasn't allowed to do, the thing that he knew he might be investigated for one day after being scolded by it, after the rules changed, the Uncle Dennis rules post 2019. He is preparing, I believe, per my reporting, to be investigated again. And the question is, how can you be prepared at every level to abide by the letter of the law while also, and this is, I think, part of the close to the sun dynamic, while also get paid and profit at the same time. And that's where it's sort of like the great man theory of fuck you. It's, you say I can't do this. I am going to do this, seemingly, and I'm going to make money on doing it. I'm going to partner with this company. It's going to go to a SPAC. I'm going to get $300 million over 23 years as a sponsor. I'm going to do it under the noses of everybody who thinks that I'm not the great man that you think. And I think it's fascinating.
It's so interesting because there has to be a level of self-deception there. We can, I suppose, from the outside say, dude, you are never pulling this off with a company that flourishes and thrives. But who are we to say that? We haven't run massive industries. We don't know. Maybe we're naive. Maybe this sort of thing happens all the time, and a company that starts off fraudulent somehow gets its sea legs later. But yeah, the problem here is that you couldn't do this with a real company. This wouldn't pass muster in a real company, I don't think. I don't think any real company, when you escalate it at Target and you go, hey, how is our sponsorship deal with Kawhi Leonard going? Will we pay him tens of millions of dollars to do nothing other than remain a Clipper? How's that going? Let's, we got to check in on that. It's just not going to happen. It can only happen in a place of scammers. And so when he's saying I got scammed, it's but I mean, I don't know. See, that's interesting. I feel like if you think about his defense with Ramona, Pablo, he's tapping into the authentic part. I think that's that's a very perceptive theory. He can say that and have it not feel like lying, throwing out all the allegedlys. We're speculating. If this thing looks like what it looks like, he can do it because that part's real, and that part can coexist with the circumvention. But then it's, how could you not see the first part coming when they're letting you circumvent?
And that's what the federal government may have interest in. Frankly, like, I'm not saying that I know the answer. No. What did you know and when did you know it? What should you have expected? What did you expect? What did you tell other people as a matter of encouraging them to trust this company? Because part of your value to aspiration was, in reality, you were the flagship investor. Your imprimatur was the thing that got, in the timeline, Ballmer signs up, brings in $50 million personally. In the emails you provide, he is the one who is helping develop business. He is a reference. He is arranging meetings with the CEO, the head of Intuit, and Joe Sandberg, the guy who pled guilty to wire fraud. The point being, this is where it's FTX. So the whole point of sports, to get back to actually what we're talking about, the through line here, is that it provides such a level of audience and presumed credibility, because anytime you see something in an arena watched by so many people, you're like, clearly this must have been vetted. Clearly. Yeah. And yet over and over again, FTX sponsors the Miami Heat arena, and the NBA basically does negligible betting. MLB puts FTX on the chest protector of the umpire. What is more on the nose metaphorical than that? And so you have just these examples of like sports washing in a just objectively useful way. And Steve Ballmer putting aspiration as the founding partner on the back of the seats courtside, signage everywhere, eventually on the jersey. It's also him saying to everybody, Drake, Leonardo DiCaprio, Robert Downey Jr., Meta, the Red Sox, all these entities, I vetted this. And so I believe that Steve Ballmer was scammed based on my reporting. What other people have been telling me that they're very curious about, and I want to be very careful because this is reporting and not speculation. They wonder, former employees of Aspiration, what they wonder is, did he really have no idea that he was partnering with a scam? if he had this level of influence and connectivity to the founders. And maybe, rightfully, he didn't. Maybe.
I mean, this is another aspect of the story that is resonant to me, or just human, was that this particular era, for whatever reason, I don't know what to call this era, by the way. It's like the latter pandemic era, or the early post-pandemic era, or
pandemic
Biden era.
Yeah.
Whatever that era was when we were watching the Super Bowl and every other ad was a crypto company ad, whatever era that was, where we have at least two major scams that appeared to get one over on people by presenting themselves as not only profitable, but of an elevated morality, that you're not only making money, but saving the world.
Yes.
And you wonder if that extra element, it should make you more skeptical. It should do the reverse of what it does. When somebody's telling you that this is lucrative, and it's lucrative in part because it's morally elevated, I have concerns about promoting my sportspredict.com non-gambling prediction site and leaning too much on this element, though I do like it. But if I was presenting it as, I don't know, in these grandiose moral ways, this sort of thing, that should make people more skeptical, but it appeared to do the opposite. And you wonder if maybe Ballmer self-scammed because this was so virtuous. Is that crazy to think?
No, I think these are all reasonable theories as to why he feels and is a victim. And by the way, like the era we're talking about is that, like, first Trump administration ends, pandemic happens, and being a good guy via the ESG movement, the environment, social impact, governance, this was a movement that raised lots of money. And so being the good guy, a good bank, Aspiration's slogan on billboards across the country, including in New York, was clean rich is the new filthy rich. It's Silicon Valley. It's Silicon Valley, right? Just like it's all of it is just exactly on that level what you think. And
I'm reminded of the Gavin Belson Silicon Valley quote of, I don't want to live in a world where someone else makes the world a better place better than we do.
Yes. And by the way, there's a lot of Gavin Belson in the typology of founder and executive here in Joe Sandberg, I dare say, based on my reporting. But the whole thing of, and by the way, we can zoom out on this and say, Steve Ballmer, as a character that we met as NBA fans, his origin story, Ethan, was the White Knight. He was replacing the worst guy, Adam Silver.
Yes.
Adam Silver, his tenure has been shaped by this transfer of power. And so the whole idea of he is profitably, and by the way, profitably, money is not a problem for him, profitably in terms of image, in terms of ego, in terms of all of this stuff. He has credibility. He gets to be the good owner. Obama's courtside. This is post-Trump. He is now the guy who's saying, let's save the world and feel good about it and also get rich. And that character, seen through the lens of Sterling, by the way, the Clippers as like the thing that is shaping Adam Silver's tenure. A bolder critic of his would say even bookending, depending on how he handles this, right?
Ooh.
Like his tenure, I believe, is going to be shaped by what he does here. I do. Now, I don't want to be alarmist, but I just think that like there's never been.
Oh, it's a big deal.
Issue. I just don't think it's a bigger one that he's faced. And so what do you do is a real question.
It's a big deal. And I was among the cynics in the early stages of reporting that he was going to sweep it under the rug. And it sounded like he was trying to lay the groundwork for that coming out of the Board of Governors. But there's just too much here. And okay, I'm of two minds with this. I want to make a point about the Clipper thing and the Sterling origins. Please. And then ask you whether or not you think the final piece of this puzzle qualifies as a smoking gun. This is our version of, is this quarterback elite? Is it a smoking gun?
Hold on, let me grow my hair like Nick Wright for a second. Anyway.
I would enjoy his thoughts on this whole thing.
Me too. Me too.
I saw him give a few. Okay, so where was I? Oh yeah, the Clipper thing.
Yeah.
Yes, the Clippers are a powerful origin story for both in the NBA, and I think you can't underestimate the magnitude with which that shaped Adam Silver. That Adam Silver was instantly the good guy who did the good thing, kicked out the racist trash that Stern was coddling, and Stern had a certain perception, making players dress up in suits.
Close personal friend, David Stern.
I feel like I feel guilty. I had a few conversations with the man. I quite liked him, but I don't want to have
Tuesdays with David that's the movie you were living.
R.I.P. David Stern,
the late great. Truly,
he mostly yelled and cursed at me, but it was very affectionate. So, but he becomes instantly this almost archetype of the good commissioner who did the good thing, and that's that guy's first taste of fame. He didn't matter at all to people. Nobody thought about him. Nobody cared about him. All of a sudden, he's the commissioner. We know nothing about him, and he's saying, banned for life. And it's huge. And in a way, I think he almost learned the wrong lesson from it. I think he learned, I have to be the social justice commissioner, when I think the lesson might have been people like some semblance of order. And crazy ass Donald Sterling with his, all the racist, insane stuff he was doing. You just can't have that in your league. You need to find a way out of it. But then it creates this dynamic where Steve Ballmer kind of saves Adam, and Adam kind of saves Steve Ballmer. Steve Ballmer wants a team. It's hard to get into that club. Adam facilitates that. And so you could say that Steve owes Adam, but Adam needed somebody right then and there who'd buy the Clippers. That was a mess.
And set a record price.
Yes.
Market setting in the NBA. The more I learned about this, and I don't want to get over my skis here, but like Steve Ballmer's value to the NBA is that he sets market prices. Naming rights deals, sales of anything. The more that you have the richest owner in all of sports in the world setting the price for something, I don't know. It seems like it's a useful thing. Now, but to the point about like the lesson Adam Silver learned by his introduction to the NBA, I think is really interesting, because he did also learn the lesson of how good it feels to be adored.
Yes.
And so if you were to be
intoxicating.
And by the way, that's where David Stern, his nerve endings were sawed off, right? David Stern was to his ear doing, he was stone cold Steve Austin at the draft. Just crushing beers against his forehead and whatever. Like, he didn't care about that. He cared about, I would say, growing the game globally, marketing. He was not naive. He was very cunning, actually, about sales. But in terms of like the personal adoration of what it meant to be a villain and how that felt, it's just funny that Adam was the guy who learned at his knee. And yet David Stern had this seemingly imperviousness to public relations, relatively speaking. And Adam seems to be so reactive that when I talk to people around basketball at the ownership level, as well as the executive C-suite, this question is not a matter of law, because the CBA has a law, a rule. It's not a real law. It's a rule. It's a collectively bargained rule about direct or circumstantial evidence that, as we explained in the episode, must also require some rational, this is a quote, a rational explanation as to why this deal was this way. And so episode 1, to me, it's an unprecedented tonnage of evidence to make a ruling. Frankly, that's just how I saw it, based on that standard.
I'm just picturing Adam Silver, Board of Governors, next board. Like, we did some focus groups, and it turns out that Kawhi Leonard was more of a charismatic spokesperson than we had known.
And by the way, that's why me made this point when we were taping the first episode. We were like, sort of like in that refractory period of like, what do we just do? Like, was this good? And he was like, part of what he loved about it was that this story required everyone to be like the maximum version of their own characters. Yeah. And so Kawhi Leonard being the worst, least desirable spokesman is why it's also the funniest possible guy to do this. And Steve Ballmer with Adam Silver, again, in this sort of like play, this Shakespearean kind of like drama, Adam, I think, and again, I don't want to psychoanalyze him. I don't know him personally in that way, but I can tell you that the thing people say, getting back around to my point, the thing people say is that he is reactive to public relations. And that is a through line through the things that you personally have long criticized about the league. That is a through line to the origin story of, I think, what Donald Sterling, that saga felt like. And it's going to be the thing that presents him with a crossroads. Like, what do you do with this? And how do you put a finger in the wind as evidence is amassing? And people are saying, I'm just going to be more bold and own it, as I am observing and reporting, it's just clearly the biggest decision you've ever had to make.
I have some sympathy for him. I do.
Sure.
I think being exposed to that exact kind of fame, that just has to do something to somebody. I think it's easy for us to abstractly describe it, but to be adored in that way as your entryway.
Contra Goodell, by the way. Contra Roger Goodell.
Indeed. And it's a tricky situation that reveals the game as well, because I think that we often mischaracterize commissioners and we describe their power, we underrate it, because you'll often say they just work for the owners. They're just the meat shield for the owners. And to a degree, they do. They could be voted out, like the CEO can be voted out at a lot of companies, but they don't tend to be. They tend to stick around for decades, and they bully certain owners, and other owners they keep as their allies. And one of the ways they do this is that when an owner is brought into the fold, he owes the commissioner. He owes him. He wanted in. Not everybody gets to be in. It's not just about how much money you have. That's not the pure way it happens. So you owe that commissioner, and Adam has his allies. They're the new money guys. They're the Viveks. They're the Steve Ballmers. And I mean, does this break some sort of covenant? I don't know what they do. I don't know how they... I don't know if it's like the Joe Smith deal and they write it down on a piece of paper, or if there's some sort of eyes wide shut ceremony.
Right.
I don't know. But part of what you got to do in this situation, if you're playing fair, is severely punish Ballmer if this is what it looks like. And that breaks the unspoken deal, perhaps.
Yeah, I think a safe way to put this is... if Adam Silver does not levy a punishment commensurate with reality, because again, if he's reactive to PR and he's dealing with a focus group of whatever, maybe it's literally Twitter, maybe it's broadly NBA fans who are variously, by the way, worried about the influence of gambling, are worried about what it means now in this era of extreme wealth. There are various competitive inequities between their teams and others, right? Various big picture concerns that land on Adam's tenure in the present tense. The thing I think is safe to say is that if Adam Silver does not punish commensurately with reality and the evidence, why have a commissioner? Like the whole point is to make a hard call in which you have to punish people who otherwise will not be. And so I just think it's frankly like a conceptual kind of test. Like, are you actually the commissioner of this sport, or are you just something else?
If he just did $1 billion fine, no draft picks, just $1 billion, would you call him a wuss? Just because of the wealth of Ballmer.
So David Sampson was doing the math, and like, yeah, it's crazy. $150 billion. What does that mean? And by the way, like, let's just be cynical and say the NBA would like to reach a negotiated settlement of punishment with Steve Ballmer. And then the question becomes, how much blood can we spill? How much blood will you let us spill? How much is enough to satisfy the, whatever, let's call ourselves the horde, the pitchforks, the people who are here to just be mad at you.
I'm so angry at the Clippers. Oh my God.
Furious. But I think there's a question of like, what satisfies the PR focus group concern? I think that's probably the question that they're thinking about. I would say from a purely like, and again, now I'm going to channel a bit of your friend, David, WWDSD. What would David Stern do? And why would he do it? And I think there's probably something, not to sound like what you are, Ethan, which is a conservative Republican.
Oh my God.
As
Is
I
that my
drop,
internal
as I-
monologue?
as
Is
I
that my
drop.
internal monologue or is that Pablo? It's hard. His voice is similar to mine.
But
You were
what
saying,
I'm
sir.
what I'm saying is that like some amount of order feels useful when the whole point here is to preserve anything resembling plausible competitive integrity. And so when I say, are you a commissioner? What's your job here? It feels like the actual job that we all want as a culture of sports, let alone a business of sports, is to plausibly believe that there's a level playing field. And I do wonder if that's real.
I would say that the current commissioner kind of presented himself as the guy whose main function was that and sold the league's parity as the value proposition of the new NBA, which makes it kind of funny. Well, two things are funny. One, that perhaps Kawhi Leonard was getting paid $50 million on the side to completely undermine that idea. And two, that it completely didn't work and the Oklahoma City Thunder won the championship.
God. Just the like. But by the way, it's almost like is that the after credit scene in the movie? It's like, and by the way, the throw-in that you gave up ended up being the MVP of the regular season in the finals, and the Oklahoma City Thunder are going to win titles for the next decade.
Yeah.
Poetic, if in fact all of this is what happened.
And it's all downstream of superstar placation. And to be clear, I'm not alleging that the $50 million has anything to do with getting him. Frankly, I'm now of the mindset of what did they do to get him? I would like to know what they do to get him.
I will say that my focus has been primarily in the years 2021 and 2022, and the before is where certainly the Toronto Raptors have been very interested. Most of all, the Lakers as well, but the Raptors, they have questions. Yeah, certainly.
Yeah, but to get the Paul George Kawhi combo, they were doing a lot of superstar placation. They didn't want to give up SGA. I know one of the guys in that front office was sick over it, but it's downstream of everything for the talent, everything for the talent. Okay, well, we've established you're not seeing your family enough, so we need to get you out of here eventually. Let's end on, as I knock over my water bottle dramatically, let's end on this. I keep hearing this phrase, smoking gun. I believe Adam Silver said the smoking gun. It almost seems like a phrase people use to not have to reckon with what's there. That's something I've found about it, where like, what is this hypothetical abstract proof smoking gun? Although you could say in the Joe Smith instance, there was a note. It was written down, smoking gun. Is Dennis Wong the minority owner of the Clippers? And what you reported, in your estimation, is that the smoking gun?
Effectively, absolutely yes. And the reason I say effectively, just because and by the way, what Adam said at the Board of Governors press conference was, by the way, and this is a fair point by him, it was clever, a smoking gun itself is circumstantial. You see the smoke.
He's really
it's not like
trying
you're
to make the sale as hard as possible. Then.
So again, well played, a good take. Yeah. What I would say though is that keep in mind that with what Steve Ballmer was doing, right, this is my theory of the case. And I think this is borne out by the evidence. Big picture, 1,000 million foot view. The guy, I probably should have mentioned this at some point in the origin story, was the guy who was running a little company called Microsoft.
Oh yeah.
in which anti-competitive regulations were not quite pressing when he was leading the company, according to various reports and in government investigations. So just his worldview around actual federal law, useful backdrop. In this case, he is punished in 2015 for DeAndre Jordan, $150,000 because of this Lexus thing he wanted to arrange. 2019, as you discuss, investigation, nothing, no punishment. Now in the present tense, because of this thing, I believe that if you see this story through the lens of where is the email in which he wrote, I'm circumventing the cap, and there's a thumbprint, you're doing the thing that Steve Ballmer knew he, of course, should not do. So it's almost like a given that wouldn't exist. And so the exercise here logically in this detective game is not where is that email or where is that signature? It's how do you prove it absent that? And what Dennis Wong is the most documentary sequence of events that you could imagine, given the larger context, which is defying rational explanation, which was in episode 1. The Dennis Wong thing is 1.99 million comes in at a time when no one else is he has never invested. Companies defaulting, blah, 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 all that stuff. CEO, president, general counsel, lawsuits, and they're disclosed. The whole thing. There's the independent auditor who had resigned. That's disclosed to him in the contract, right? So he has zero alibi for not knowing. Plus his daughter works there. Plus Steve Ballmer's blah, blah, blah. You get the point. I'm just
as Amin said, the reverse of insider trading. Having somebody there, knowing the company's going down and plopping a couple mil into it.
It's such a good line by Amin. Such a good line. And so rational explanation, right? So he puts it in. 9 days later, Kawhi Leonard, who's months late, because, spoiler alert, the money they raised from Steve, the $50 million, the money they raised from everybody, it's gone because it's a scam, right? And so at that point, in comes the money. 9 days later, out goes the money, 1.75 million to Kawhi Leonard. And so from a pure, just like what happened here, I don't want to be condescending when I say that this feels like an IQ test. I'm just like, what do you think happened? And we can play defense attorney for Steve Ballmer, but if your standard is there's no paper with a signature, it's literally missing the entire premise of what he attempted to do.